Ready? In three, two. It feels so long ago when Orange County Soccer Club kicked off the 2020 USL Championship season with a scoreless draw against El Paso Locomotive. And yes, it feels that way because it has been that way. It has been around live for 5 long months in what is unknown territory with the global pandemic of COVID-19. With me today is the coach of OCSC, Braeden Cloutier, to talk to us about the return of soccer and the challenges that the team has experienced on the return to the field. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Coach, first off, before we get into the team aspect, I would like to ask you about these past months. What has it been like for you in life with your family before resuming activities with the team? How did you cope and dealt with the quarantine on the extended layoff?
Well, I mean, it was definitely frustrating. It was definitely something that we've never gone through before. So it was challenging, to say the least. I know for me personally, I think after the first couple of weeks, not knowing when we were going to restart, and then as it went on longer and longer, even myself with my sleep patterns and a little bit of anxiety in the afternoons, it caused issues that I'm unfamiliar with. So I have 3 children. They're all a little bit older now, but they experienced it where my son wasn't in school and he's in high school, and my daughter's studying to become a teacher. So even for those, my children, it was difficult for them to adjust. But we stayed positive, we stayed supportive, we all stayed healthy. We followed all the protocols and rules, and we stayed in with the quarantine, and we kind of created our own little bubble with our surroundings. So we got through it, thankfully. I think we're all grateful that sport's back, and at one capacity or another, and we're back on the field.
Coach, was there like any specific activity that you like to do with your family during that time?
Well, what I actually did was I started doing some chores around the house that I hadn't had the time to do. So I actually painted my entire house, my upstairs and downstairs, every single room.
Wow.
I recarpeted my house. I cleaned my house. I got rid of some old furniture, bought some new furniture. So I just had some projects around the house that I hadn't had time for before, and now it gave me an opportunity to get those completed.
A lot of people took this time to reinvent themselves or find new ways to accomplish new goals. What would you say you got done or achieved during the time of quarantine on a personal level, besides what you just spoke about?
For me personally, I mean, it gave me an opportunity to keep educating myself, to do a lot of reading, and we took in a lot of Zoom calls with our technical director, Franz Hoog. I had opportunities to talk with different clubs and different coaches from around the world, and sit in on and listen to some of these. For me to better myself in my career as a head coach, and to learn different techniques and strategies, and then obviously with the different protocols that we have to follow now, that just being creative. But as a technical staff, it gave us an opportunity to grow and to challenge ourselves. So we gave everybody a bit of homework to improve themselves, to follow their specific programs from within their own areas and expertise. And I think that we've grown tremendously over the last 3 months as a staff, that we didn't have time. Like I said before, it might have taken another 1 or 2 years to get to the level that we're at now, but it gave us this opportunity, so we use that time wisely.
What kind of program would you say you guys placed for the players during the quarantine? We heard of leagues even using Zoom to train with the players and track their progress. Was that part of the program that you guys installed in them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the different protocols and obviously staying out of group trainings at one point, and it was all individualized, and then obviously trying to follow the protocol where it wasn't being able to use gyms and going into the weight rooms. So what we were able to do was we provided each player with an individual program for them specifically on areas that they can improve upon. Our strength coach worked with them via Zoom calls. When it came to that, we have GPS that we use to track the players to see if they're following the fitness program. So we actually had all the data that we needed to see when we returned to play and we returned to practice. We knew exactly what level every player was at physically. But we also used, we used Zoom calls with yoga. We had yoga that we used. We had a row class. We've got these row machines from one of the local companies, like a spin class, but it's a row class. So we were able to get these row machines and just trying to be creative, keep the players engaged. Obviously, it wasn't easy for them. But we also have weekly Zoom calls with the team as a whole, but also individually and in small groups. We took like the defenders and the midfielders and forwards and the goalkeepers, and we gave them homework as well. So we watched a lot of soccer. We watched actually all the teams that are going to be in our group here in the next couple of months. We got to see them play their first game and some of their previous games, and basically gave our players a coaching course. And so they were clipping videos and creating homework for themselves and understanding who we're going to be facing here in the next few months. So it was a very good opportunity for us to educate our players and how we want to play and what we expect from our players, but then for them to take a little bit of ownership as well and watching the other team. So it created a really good dialogue between the coaches and players. And I was pretty impressed with some of their reports that they gave back to the coaching staff. But I think like I said, I mean, we use the time wisely, and I think that we've come out of this a lot stronger.
I imagine, Coach, that you will continue to use some of these in the long term, no? Even if we do pass through the COVID-19.
Yes, and that was one of the things. I think that, we've done video session with the teams in the last few years where, we have our analysis guy, Peter Nugent, who puts together the clips of our opponents. And then I usually do the recap videos of our own games. But this time we actually gave the players a little bit of an incentive to go and research. And then they start asking questions. And then it becomes an open dialogue between the staff and the players, where before it was always a one-way street. It was always the staff just showing and telling the players about our opponent, where now we actually, communicate back and forth.
I know you talked a little bit about film, and I know this season you were not able to gather much. I mean, you only had one game, if I'm not mistaken, against El Paso. And I know that you were particularly very content, very happy with the way that the team was brought together this year. How many times do you see that video? Is there any other videos that you compare it with?
Well, the good thing is that we videotaped pretty much every training session.
Okay.
And also the preseason games that we had against, we had some really good preseason games against MLS opponents, as well as college opponents and USL opponents in preseason. So we've accumulated a lot of clips from just even scrimmages within our training sessions that we've used. So, we've changed shape every once in a while when it comes to the tactics and identifying the spaces where we can take advantage of our opponents, and then vice versa, if identifying where they can maybe hurt us. So we need to make sure that we're aware. But it's been a very good tool for us. And like I said, with now the players being more engaged, when they actually have to make clips of their own videos and the team videos, and then they start asking questions, and we collaborate together, and ultimately it's been very positive.
When did the team finally get on the field?
I think it was June. Let me look at the calendar. 24th, I believe it was. June 24th, and then we had a week of non-contact training.
Okay.
So we've only had contact training for 2 weeks, which hasn't been ideal. But it's obviously, like, again, I say I'm grateful that we've been given the opportunity. But a normal preseason, you have 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of training, of fitness, of contact, and hopefully about 4 or 5 preseason games where, ideally that would be perfect. And in the situation that we're in right now, we've only had 2 weeks of contact training, and we haven't really even played 11v11 yet going into Thursday's match.
And what were your impressions of the first couple of trainings of coming back?
I've been very proud of the players with their fitness. It hasn't been easy. It's been challenging, but I think the fitness has been one thing that I've been really proud of, the way the players took care of themselves during the whole time. So fitness, I've been very proud and pleased. Technically, I think the players have been doing their touches and everything that we instructed them to do. So I think 2 weeks, I think the most frustrating thing is that we haven't really got to play a game yet. But the training sessions have been very, very positive. And I've been very proud of the players.
Now, it sounds like physically the team is where you want them to be. But mentally, I imagine that there were situations where the players felt that strained or maybe that frustration. Was there any particular case, or was there a more of a broad example?
I think, definitely for the younger players, I don't, I mean, it's challenging for them, but it's a little bit indifferent. They're new to their careers, and I mean, just taking a little bit of a break, and they just keep their touches. I think mentally they were still engaged, but I think the challenge was for our older players, like a Michael Orozco or a Thomas Innevolts, and these guys are toward the end of their career, so they definitely didn't want to end their career on the pandemic. So for them, it was frustrating, and I know mentally challenging for them to stay engaged, because they're desperate to play. They need to play. As an older player, and I can use myself as a reference. If you miss 6 to 9 months as an older player, it's very difficult to get back at the level that you were without any competitive matches. So I know it weighed heavily on those guys. We also have a mental coach as well that provided us with a lot of information and techniques that we could use to stay sharp mentally, to stay focused during this pandemic. But I think these guys are also extremely grateful to be back on the field right now, and get back on Thursday night is going to be really important for them.
In talking with Oliver Viz, who is the president of operations of the team and the general manager of OCSC, I told him that during the many years that I've been covering the team, I've always noticed the importance of OCSC of promoting youth players, and I think that's kind of important if you want to keep growing as a team. Now, talk to us a little bit about the changes that you've felt that you've had since March until now, because there have been new additions as well on the team.
Yes, I mean, obviously, one of the major goals for our ownership group is to be bringing these young players through, but bringing them through at the right time. Obviously, you don't want to throw somebody in the deep end when they're not ready for it, and ultimately it becomes detrimental to their development. So we've created a pathway for all these players and an individual development plan for each one. And assistant coaches Richard Chaplow and Didier Kretnin and our goalkeeper coach Victor Noguera have done a really good job of creating these plans, identifying weaknesses in these players individually. And then our strength and conditioning coaches have also identified areas where they can improve. But for me as a coach, it's definitely, giving these guys the opportunities that they deserve, not given basically just because. And these guys have come into practice, and they're competing day in, day out with top pros, like I said, like Michael Orozco and Thomas Innevolts and these guys, and they have to prove themselves. And so, we want to make sure it's done at the right time. The last thing you need to do is if you play 5 or 6 of these young kids and you end up getting, beat pretty handily, it's probably a little bit detrimental to their development. So a perfect case is Aaron Cervantes, the goalkeeper, who 3 years ago when we signed him, he didn't even sit on the bench, I don't believe, for one game. But we got him the training. We identified areas where he could improve upon. And then with the help of everybody, with his IDP program that he developed, and last year, I believe he got 12 games last year. And then he ended up making the World Cup team, the under-17 team that went to Brazil in October. So carrying that through into preseason this year, he played against, MLS clubs and did very, very well. And he ended up starting our first game. So he's on the right path. But again, it was done in a way to help him and not in a detrimental way. And now coming out of this coronavirus pandemic right now, I believe our 2 goalkeepers have been probably our 2 best players. They've both come in really sharp. There's a really healthy competition between the 2 of them. And I believe Aaron's going to get the nod on Thursday night. So again, it just shows everything that we're trying to do and what we're trying to build. But Aaron's definitely deserved it, and I feel 100% confident and comfortable with him in goal.
Francis Jacobs was the youngest signing for any professional team, and the team basically made history with that. Do you think we'll finally see him sometime this season?
I think we'll definitely see him this season. I think there'll be a time for us to give him some minutes. But But again, it's kind of in a similar situation with Aaron at the beginning. I mean, when we signed Francis last season, I mean, it could have been, one of the things where we could have just gone ahead and thrown him in a game and used it as a publicity, situation.
Yeah.
But at the time, Francis wasn't ready, and I think it would have been more detrimental to him. And so he's grown leaps and bounds in the last 6 to 9 months. He comes in every single day, trains like a pro, and he is a pro, and he handles himself accordingly. But there's still areas in his game that he needs to improve that I think if you throw him in a little bit too early, he might struggle a little bit in some of these games, especially against the Phoenix Rising on Thursday night. It becomes a bit of a challenge. But having said that, I definitely think here in the next, couple months that he's earned the right and he deserves to get some minutes. It's just now identifying exactly how and when to use him.
We're turning into the last few questions, and we really, really thank you, Coach, for your time. Since the season has been shortened at around half of it, do you feel will be enough time for OCSC to find the chemistry balance between the players, especially with the addition of the youth players?
Well, I think number one, first and foremost, this year I think we've put together a solid group of players that complement each other. The challenges in the locker room with different personalities and such that, in the last couple of years we've been very successful, yet I've always felt like we still haven't been a complete group. And I think this year we've really done a really good job of identifying the right type of players, the right type of personalities and characters. So even though that we're going to be in a shortened season and we really haven't had much time to prepare, I think that the group camaraderie and the team itself is extremely strong. And I think that's going to be a big key going into the next couple of months to get results. I think that, with that, I think we'll be right up there with the top.
Obviously, winning a title is the ultimate goal for any team. But en route to that, what would you like to accomplish as well?
Well, I tell you, I mean, it's funny you say that because we're not in a normal season where we're going to be playing, over the course of 34, 35 weeks. And, but I think the good thing is that we have an extremely high competitive nature, a competitive spirit within our team, whether it's a 34 or 35 week season, whether it's a regionalized, like what we're doing over the course of maybe a couple months, or if it's even, playing head tennis or anything competitive. Our guys are constantly competing with one another. So we have an ultra competitive group. So regardless if we only play this many games or that many games, every single one of us want to win every game. And there's no compromising that. So even if it is a bit of a shorter season, I think the goal for all of us is definitely to win another championship and compete in this smaller and shortened season.
The club seems to be testing out some interesting ways to be creative around the stadium with some cutout boards, and the fans will be able to buy some of those cutout boards and put their pictures on the stadiums. How much attention do you think the players will be given to this, or how important do you think this will be to have on the field for you guys?
I think cosmetically, I mean, it definitely helps because the challenge is trying to create that environment that you feel like you're in a normal game, and in less like you're in a practice game. So the more that we have things like that in the stands, it creates, even from, just the peripheral of what they see in the stadium, that they feel like they're in a real game, as opposed to a training session. So, but I've always said that, once you're on the field and the blood and the adrenaline gets pumping, that, these guys are ready for it. And then, the lights are going to be on Thursday night. We're going to be on ESPN. And I think these guys are definitely up for the challenge. So it's going to be a really good game.
And lastly, what's your message for those fans who also have had their share of entertainment cut off and probably will be off for a little bit longer?
Well, I definitely hope everybody's healthy and safe, first and foremost. And I think we're all grateful that we have this opportunity and that these guys can, watch us on ESPN Thursday and keep following us for the rest of the season. But I think they're going to be proud with, the effort and the players that we put out on the field, that they're going to do their best to entertain our fans and make our fans proud.
Well, there you have it. OCSC will be playing on Thursday at 6 p.m. on ESPN2 against Phoenix. And thank you, Coach, for your time. And don't forget, folks, that you can follow me in all my social media platforms at Jad Del Reda. You can see it right there on the screen. until next time. Thank you, Coach.
No, thank you, Chad. I appreciate it.
Take care.